Hi guys, welcome back to another Photos Go video. This channel is where we discuss and learn new skills around the topics of design and development. If you want to grow your skills and learn new things that are coming up, please subscribe for more videos just like this. Don't forget to smash the like button for me. This really helps me to create more content. In this video, we'll be learning about the different breaking changes in Next 13, specifically how we fetch data. I'm inside the Nextjs 13 official documentation release, and we are pretty much interested in one specific feature, which is this particular thing called data fetching. So recently React also introduced a support for first class support for promises, and which is a powerful way of data fetching and handling promises inside of our components. And with the new Next 13, we could leverage the use of native web fetch API, which is extremely great, and it automatically deducts fetch requests. We could achieve this with a single one API, and the example is listed here. So which is great, and we can also use the different lifecycle kind of methods which was introduced in Next 12 with Next 13 in more improved way, which a single API. For example, if we take a reference to the old Next 12 documentation, inside data fetching we have a couple of options like getServerSideProps, getStaticPaths, getStaticProps, client side, and incremental static regeneration. So we'll be going through all the data fetching that are available in Next 12 and making it possible in Next 13. And this is the Nextjs 13 official beta documentation, and still this is not a stable release, but still we can experiment things out. And for example, we could use this fetching. If we widget fetching, then all of the stuffs are listed here. For example, we'll be building this simple mini application where we'll be covering all the ways how we can fetch data in Next 13. If we go to this server, then this particular thing is server rendered, and basically this is similar to what we do in getServerSideProps in Next 12, and we are doing this in Next 13. And in this client, this is basically a client fetching, which we could use some other libraries for doing this client requests. For example, maybe SWR, Axios, or React query, something like that. Also, we are covering other stuffs like getStaticPaths and getStaticProps. Basically, this list is getStaticProps, and this is getStaticPaths. For example, if we click on it, and this is implementation of getStaticPaths. So basically we are covering most of the things that we could do with data fetching in Next 13. So without any delay, let's get this started. So let's first create a blank Next 13 project with npx create next app latest. Let's give it a name, Next 13 data fetching, and we will just stick with JavaScript for now, and we will accept some ESLint configuration. Looks like our project has been created, so let's navigate to this project. After opening this project, you may see some difference in the file and folder structures here. So there are a couple of changes in the app directory and folder structures. And Nextjs 13 introduced the app directory with the new features and conventions. However, you can still use the old way, and it's backward compatible. And we don't require any use of the app directory, but you still can make the use of app directory, which we will be using. So first of all, let's go ahead and delete this pages directory, and we will be creating a new directory and call it app. And inside this app, we will create another directory. For example, let's have some pages for now, and we can call it page.jsx, not index.jsx, which was before, but we rename it to page.jsx. And inside this page.jsx, what we want to do is we want to copy and paste some hard-coded content. This is basically our main page, so we just are just adding a few paragraphs. What is data fetching in Next 13? and all stuff. Okay, so after that's done, let's go ahead and create another file, and we call it layout. And inside of our layout.jsx, what we want to do is we want to basically wrap all of our application inside this layout. So we will import the styles, which is from this global.css, and we'll also be creating navbar component, which can be inside of shared folder, which shares its component across the application. So let's go ahead and create a folder and call it shared, and inside shared we want navbar.jsx. All right, it looks cool. So inside navbar.jsx, what we want to do is we want to import link from NextLink and a couple of styles. We are using CSS modules for our demo purposes, which is navbar.module.css. So let's rename this home module, which is not used anywhere, to navbar.module.css. All right, so inside this navbar model, we will just add a few lines of styles, just to add a sprinkle of these colors inside of our anchor links. And inside navbar, everything looks fine, and we are using this navbar inside of our layout right here and passing every other components or pages as a layout wrapper. All right, so after that's done, let's go ahead and create a couple of folders that we defined here as a route, and it's server, client, and static props. So basically we are going over all the data fetching options that are available to Next2Web in Next.js. So how would we handle that situation? All right, so basically what we want to do is we want to create new folders for each of it. First one would be client, and second one would be server, and third one would be static props. All right, so in each of this folder that we created, which is server, client, and static props, we will make a main file which is not index.jsx but piece.jsx. And inside here we want to make the use of React functional component, RFC. Yeah, and call this client page, and just return client page. All right, so after that's done, probably we don't need to import React here. This can be done with this. So inside server, we'll also make page.jsx, and also paste in some server page right here. Okay, so this can be server page. All right, so the last one would be this particular thing, which is static props. So static props, we will also create page.jsx, which should act like the main page inside here, and we will also paste in some stuff here, for example, and call this static prop page. Okay, so this is static prop page. All right, so looks cool. Let's go ahead and spin up our local server, because we have made all of our route, which is inside of navbar, which is inside shared, and we are taking the path of server, client, and static props, which we created a folder for each of it, and made our main file, which is page.jsx. Pretty much straightforward till now. So let's run npm run dev. Spin up in localhost probably 3000 app directories experimental. Okay, so we need to add this experimental flag over here. So let's go ahead and copy the stuff, and we'll paste it right in here. All right, so let's go ahead and run dev and spin up our local server and check whether we have everything working or not. And looks like everything is working fine. The route has been set up. For example, we can go to server, which says server page. Inside client, we says client page, and static props, it says static prop page. Basically, we created each of the page inside this folder, which is how the routing works inside Next, right? Pretty much straightforward. So first of all, what we want to do is we want to start everything with the getStaticProps, right? So what is getStaticProp? I want to bring this old documentation here. So basically, getStaticProps is the page that is generated in the build time, and all the HTML is pre-generated. So it's not on the request time, but it's build time, and we'll write our console log function so that we can see that in action. First things first, let's go to our static prop page. So inside this page, let's first import the things that we need. We'll be making the use of the link and also the use hook from the React, which is the new hook. And we'll create a new function. For example, this can be simply asynchronous function, and we will call it getCharacters. Basically, this getCharacters are returning some JSON data from this API. And for the data, we are using Riki Moti API, which is an awesome API endpoint, which has both GraphQL and REST endpoints, which is great. What we want to do is we want to grab all the data that's returned from getCharacters and with the use of the use hook, right? So we just use and then right here. Right, and after that's done, we will return some JSX with some data that's mapped, and which should be something like this. Like this is getStaticProps in action, and getStaticProps, which is kind of a thing we do in the modern Nextjs. This is what it is. Let's go ahead and save this, and let's see. We have the server running, and let's see this here. Let's take a refresh, and here we have our data. Right, we have all of our data that's populated. What we want to do now is we want to add a console log. For example, let's add a console log here, so that we will know that how this is like being called. For example, if we go to our page console and refresh, and as you can see, we don't have any console log printed right here. But if you see the browser, then you may see something like here, right? So this is why this page is generated in the build time, and we don't see anything console log in the output in the browser. So this is how we replicate things with getStaticProps inside of Nextjs. Let's take a look at another way of data fetching, getServerSideProps. If we take a look at the old documentation here, the getServerSideProps, as it says, calls the API whenever we visit the page. How can we achieve this in modern React? I mean modern Next.js. So I'm inside the server route, which just says server page, right? So inside this server page, we want to basically use the use thing, the use hook. Like we can use the use hook, and we are basically getting characters, the same API endpoints. We are getting characters. We are, and this is an asynchronous. For example, this is an asynchronous action, and we are waiting for it to be resolved. And particularly the thing that we need to note about is we have this additional parameters that we pass in to the fetch API function into this particular section, where it says that we need to add the cache no store with the fetch and the URL, and pass this one, which is some additional parameters, so to say, and similar, which acts similar to getServerSideProps. And we add the cache, force cache, which results to getStaticProps, and getStaticProps with some revalidate option can be achieved with this, right? So pretty handy. Okay, so that's what we call it. A single API can handle all the stuff with getStaticProps, getServerSideProps, and getStaticPaths, and all the stuff. So inside of our server page, what we want to do is we want to basically return all the JSON characters that we have, and we want to make the use of the use thing right here. So and we added this, and we basically want to map it now. So let's go ahead and map it. So yeah, this is server fetching getServerSideProps, as we did in Next.js, and this is a Next.13 version of it. We are taking the characters results, because there are the area of results inside this character that has been returned from get character, the data. We are mapping all of it and printing it out in the UI. This is what is it, and the main thing is this particular thing, cache no store. All right, so let's hit save, and we can see in the browser getServerSideProps is in action, and we can see all the data that has been populated right here. Okay, so now let's go ahead to our another piece where we did getStaticProps, we did getServerSideProps. Now how we can handle some client API requests. Okay, if you remember, we created a route which is a client route, and we have nothing here. So basically what we want to do is we want to fetch our data from the client side every time we hit that particular route or an endpoint. Basically we are calling whenever we visit this client route. Fetch is not currently supported in the client components like we are doing it right now. And inside this documentation, I want to take a reference to this particular section, which is fetch, example fetch and use in client components. And you can see here, fetch is not currently supported in client components and may trigger multiple re-renders. For now, we need to fetch data in the client component, and it's recommended we use a third-party library such as SWR, because SWR is a library created by Next and Vercel, but we still can use any other data fetching library, for example, React Query or Axios or Super Agent or something like that. And alternatively, we can still wrap with a utility function outside of component and use the use hook. All right, so what we want to do is we want to basically do similar thing, but we will be using the SWR, right, as said from the documentation. So to install SWR, let's go to our IDE, and we want to initialize or create another tab because I don't want to stop the server. So npm install SWR. This will install the SWR package for us so that we can fetch some data in the client side. Looks like SWR 1.3.0 has been added. Okay, looks cool. So let's import this. So as this is a client component, we want to add explicitly say that this is use client, and we want to use SWR from use SWR, and we also are importing link from NextLink. Okay, so to fetch data from with the SWR, we basically want to create another function, which generally it's called the fetcher function, which is taken in the path. It's not we can just hard code the path here, but we are taking the path, and the path is there here, and we are adding .then because this is a promise that needs to be resolved. Okay, and turning that data into JSON with the fetcher. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to get the data returned from here, and we added the characters, and inside this characters we use the use SWR from the SWR package, and we added the path and also added another parameter of the fetcher like we do in the use SWR package. All right, looks cool. And let's also return some data that has been defined here, and we are using this characters as a data and results, and we are mapping it out, and basically we are adding the link and the name that's mapped here. So everything looks fine. This is how we deal with client-side data fetching in Next.js. with the use of third-party libraries and packages. All right, so if you take a look at the browser and take a refresh, and you should see this client page is loaded with some data, but I wonder, probably I didn't save it. Let's also refresh this, and we can see all the data that's been fetched, and this is the example of the client-side data fetching. Until this point, we have basically covered most of the data fetching approach that we could use inside of Next.js 13. But the one last thing that we need to cover is getStaticPaths. So basically, when we want to generate multiple pages in the build time, we need this approach. This is like served as a pure static content, so that the path will be generated, and all the routes that we added in the params here, for example, according to Next.js, we will generate the path that would be statically pre-rendered, all the paths specified by getStaticPaths. So this is the old version of how we can do with Next tool, but in Next 13 we have we can achieve the same in the similar way. For example, if we widget this particular sorry, not that, but inside of our static prop, we could create another folder here and call it slug, and basically we are using this array brackets because it's a dynamic that's going on. So we will also create page.jsx, and inside this page.jsx, basically what we want to do is we want to basically do the similar thing that we did before, which is we'll get all the characters and we will add a function which gets all the characters and return the JSON data. And the main thing here is for getStaticPaths, we need to create a synchronous function, and we just name this particular function generate static params. Basically, they are generating all the possible routes that the user can take beforehand. For example, we are getting the characters, all the data from the characters, and we are returning the slug key value pairs, which is the slug, and the value is this particular thing, which is the character's name from the Wikimote API. We are returning the characters and replacing the spaces with just a dash, because they are uppercase and lowercase names there. So, and basically we are doing this and returning all the characters. And what we can do now is we can use this as a params inside this static page. And return this params.slug here. And if we hit on save, and these params can be like we can take from this params.slug. If we take a reference to our build here, and we can see all of the params slug. If we click on this, then we can see the character name is Rick blah blah blah, which is basically the param slug. So this is how you can achieve getStaticPaths in Next 13. And I have added all the comments, and you can take a reference: getStaticPaths in Next 13, and getStaticProps in Next 13, and getServerSideProps in Next 13, and get client side data fetching in Next 13. We have completed all the data fetching part, and I want to cover another piece of the newly introduced feature, which is suspense. So let's import a suspense, and we want to use this particular suspense inside of our component whenever we don't have any data yet. So wrap this all data inside of suspense, and we want to add a fallback. But it will show up when we don't have the data ready for the UI, right? We can add a loading, and you can still add custom component you can create inside of Shade or anywhere in your file directory. So this is how you can add a suspense. We have covered most of the data fetching approach that we could take in Next.js 13. But if you are pretty much interested and we want to dive deep into the further advanced topic, then definitely you could take a reference to the documentation, which is the Next.js beta Next 13 documentation, where we could still use parallel data fetching approach and sequential data fetching and block rendering routes and all this segment cache configuration and all this advanced topic if you are interested. So I hope you learned something new from this. If you want to learn more around the topics of design and development, please subscribe for more videos just like this. And don't forget to smash that like button for me. This really helps me to create more content. Thanks a lot, guys. See you in the next one.